are really fortunate to have three very distinguished speakers who bring with them very rich experience. They have installed, they have been responsible for the operations of the agri-photovoltaic plants, at least the two of them. I mean, they can share their experience and how the experience can be utilized by some of you today over here. With these few words, I would like to now request our first presenter, Mr. Surindar Ahuja, who is a director at Sunmaster. A brief introduction about Mr. Surindar Ahuja. He established in 2019 the company. It's one of the fastest growing company in the field of renewables. He has vast experience of 20 plus years in various domain of solar rooftop plant, water heating systems, biodiesel, waste to energy, heat pump, renewable water heating and community heating. He has explored and established multiple brands in the UK and other neighboring countries. He also has set up a specialized project in agri-PV and has supported more than 30 megawatt installations in the CIN sector, empowering the nations with renewables. The floor is yours, Mr. Ahuja.
I am Surindar Ahuja from Sunmaster, and this is a bit about us. We have 75 employees. They all are engineers. They are our in-house engineering team. We are EPC and we are the system integrator. As of now, we install more than 50 megawatt in the industrial segment, in ground-mounted rooftop solar and agri-PV as well. We are engineering towards to the net zero by reducing the carbon footprint in the industry. So now comes to the agri photovoltaics. That is, farmland is equivalent to photovoltaics plus food crop. That means effective utilization of land, electrifying your crops under the farming canopy under the farm solar panels. This is a synopsis of one of the projects we executed in the outskirts of New Delhi. The capacity of the plant is 2.5 megawatt, and we use solar modules from Sun Power in it, and solar inverter we use Fronis Eco because it's a string and snap technology inverter, and it's good. It's performing very good in terms of the agri-PV. Solar structure is hot dip. Structure height is 4.3 meters. So underneath of that we are able to do farming practices, and we start this construction in the late of November 2020, and we finished it, like we hand over the project to the client on 26th of March 2021. The completion time is around 120 days, and we use the module matrix over here, 5 multiple number of the rows. So that means from one side to another side it is 10 meters, and the farm area is total 4.5 acres. Now journey from uncultivated land to revenue land. So we start this journey on 27th of November 2020, and first of all we start the fencing of the farm, and we did the fencing. As you see in this slide, we are just marking the pillars and foundation for the solar structure, because once they are in a exact matrix, only then we are able to make the frame and we have put the solar on it. This is the root of AVP, agriculture photovoltaics, because once your structure, like as in a tree grows up, there is a roots in it. So if you are going to put the structure in an open farm, open field, so it must be totally strengthened, because once you are put the structure on the height of the 4.3 meter or 5 meters above on the ground road to do the agri photovoltaics in it, so it must be properly strengthened, because in green fields you know about the wind velocity and the thrust of the wind on the solar panels and all. This is now at this point of time in the month of January 2021, we are ready with all our foundation work, and now we are ready to cultivate the energy on it. We put this sort of the structure, which is on the height of 4.5 meter, and one side is 5 meter, another side is 4 meter, so in between it is somewhere around 4.5 to 4.3 meter in height. Now it's a time to harvest, not the plant, but the energy from the solar PV. So we start producing power from in the end of March 2021 and start feeding in the grid. As you all aware, and the line said, agriculture land without crop is not a land at all. So now we already established the plant. Now it's time to just grow something, foods, vegetable, fruits underneath of it, and we start practicing all the things. Why agrivoltaics? Agrivoltaics practices with shade tolerant plants only is practically possible underneath of solar panels, because some plants required more shade, more light, some plants required less light from to do the photosynthesis. So in agriculture practices, we are using the plants which require less shade to produce more food and everything. We also did horticulture practices underneath in it. We are also doing now dairy farming, and we are coming up with the hydroponics concept under the canopy of solar PV. It's time for some fruits, like we already put lot of labor in it. So we are presently getting like spinach, ladyfinger, potatoes, tomatoes, bottle gourd underneath of our solar PV plant. And last month we just grow up 2300 kg of bottle gourd out of this farm. On the small part of the farm is around 1.2 acres out of 4.5 acres. Healthy wise and wealthy wise, we grow a lot of bottle gourds in our farm. And it's fruit time. We already put a lot of trees underneath of the solar PV, and we are getting fruits on it, like we are getting bananas, we are getting melons as per the seasonal fruits. Although we put some of the plants related to some of the trees, that is the mango one. So we are, in this season, we are getting mangoes as well in our agri PV farm. It's energy time. All of us work very hard in this farm, and we required some sort of the teas and coffees. For getting the teas and coffees in our farm, we'll start dairy farming, and we have now 2 cows. We are going to be increased by the 4, and we are getting somewhere around 60 liters of the milk out of them. And these all cows are happy there because they are grazing a fresh cattle field in our farm. As you know, the agri photovoltaics, the developers are happy, the financiers are happy, even the animals are happy too, because they are having the fresh grass and they have a full farm to move into in it. We can't forget you. We have golden retrievers and German Shepherd on our farm who will protect our farm from all the type of the thefts and all the things. So they are the guards in the nights as well, in a day as well. Now the question comes, is it a viable solution? Is agri-photovoltaics is a viable solution? Agri-photovoltaics come with a promising future which hit 2 birds with 1 stone, helping our food supply and transition us to cleaner energy, extra protection from extra harmful sunlights, improve the health of soil, and increase the level of nutrients, creating important ecosystem. It also protect crop. It also protect crop from birds and bats. Now the time turns to challenges. I visited a lot of agri-photovoltaic plants, and which I felt before as well, there was a problem of cleaning. We are not able to clean solar panels because we have a different sort of the cropping is going on, and there is no exact provision for cleaning of solar panels. So we put the walkways in our planning stage. So on every structure we have a walkway, we have a water pipeline, so the person will go up and they'll clean the panels periodically basis. Agri-photovoltaics, now it's time for the global warming. Agri-photovoltaic test field and open field have a temperature difference of approximately 10 degrees Celsius on hot summer days, which we observe from last 1.5 years. Everywhere where we have a modules, underneath we have a 10 degree less temperature than the open field. Reduce the evaporation of water by 50% compared to open field. That is our personal observation while putting the agrivoltaics. By reducing evaporation, it keeps cooling underneath of solar panels, keep panels cooler to perform better result. we got 12% high production than industrial installation. As I already told you, we did lot of installations on the industrial sector. So we are comparing the production on the same day, same time. We are getting somewhere around 10 to 15% higher in agri-PV farms. So just based on this, that it seems agrivoltaics is an winning strategy. But one thing I want to be mentioned over here, in agri-photovoltaics, we have to increase, we have to put more money, approximately 20% more money than the conventional solar PV systems on land or maybe on the industrial shed. Because we have to raise the structure height by 4.5 meters or 5 meters to do the cropping. And in agri-PV, we have to take care about how much gap we have to give, which sort of the plants we are going to put in it, which sort of the activities we are going to perform underneath of the solar panels. So we have to design before our plant beforehand to enter into the agri-PV. It's a small video of 3 minutes, which I want to show you how we did and what we did and how our plants look. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Ahuja, for the wonderful presentation. What I really liked about your concept is that you have brought in a holistic outlook, including the dairy farming, looking at different kinds of species of vegetables, fruits. That's very interesting. Only thing is, I have to admit that this is not captured as part of our case studies in the IGF study, and as soon as we are back in Delhi, we will request our colleagues to have this included. This will be the 18th or 19th case study, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. What we could do is, we can have a few questions to Mr. Ahuja right away, so that we don't miss out in case we have any queries on this particular project. Any questions from the audience? Or if not, I think we as panelists, we can also pose questions to Mr. Ahuja. Okay, I don't see any hands up going there in the audience. My first question to you is, Mr. Ahuja, did you take any banking financing for this, or how was this whole project financed?
It is financed by, this project is financed by bank, and it is financed by SBI Bank. Yeah. So it's very easy to take the, you see, to take the, nowadays if you want to go and you will just submit the project reports and everything to the bank, they will easily finance the project.
Who is the buyer of power?
The power presently we are just feeding it to the grid and it is under net metering. So
Delhi.
there is no buyer of power now.
Delhi is net metering. Which
yeah,
one?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Delhi's net metering.
And how big you said it was? DC?
It is DC 2.5 megawatt.
So must be around 10 acres?
Not 4.5 acres.
I see. So the
This is the advantage of agrivoltaics. You have enough space. You can utilize the space in any sense in which you want to be. Like
what is the tilt angle?
Tilt angle is around 15 degree in it.
And you have 4 panels in
No, it's
portrait.
5 panels.
5 panels.
It's a
portrait.
matrix of 5 multiply the space available with us. It's in the matrix of 5 multiplied by 126, 5 multiplied by 65. It depends upon the space.
This is in Isapur, is it? This
Yeah,
is the one,
this is the Isapur.
I've seen it outside
Yeah,
Delhi.
yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Great job.
What's your focus? It's a power generation or agriculture? Both.
Power production as well in terms of the, you see, the people are putting lot of poly houses, greenhouses, and in terms of the storm and wind, it got damaged. After 3 years, 4 years, they have less life. But then solar, if you are going to put the solar panels, so the life is more than 25 years or 27 years. That's why we built a strong structure which can resist the wind field forces coming from the north to south.
Do you feel with bank finance and no government subsidies, is it will it work for a longer period?
You see, it's a model. It's a model for all of us. So it hardly matters whether it is economical viable or not. First of all, if we are doing something, so it must be, if you will say to them where we can see the agrivoltaics in India, so you can come and see. That's why we are doing different activities underneath of it. Like we are doing we are coming up with the hydroponics there. We already did dairy farming. We already planted lot of fruits. We got lot of failures as well in it. Like in terms of the wheat and maize and rice, we are unable to grow in it because due to less amount of light coming down from the solar panels. And in future, if we are coming up with that sort of the plant, we are coming up with bifacial panels, because when we install these panels at that time in India, we don't have bifacial.
Sir,
Thank you.
Sir, can you use it as shed net? Have you thought of using it as shed net?
Shed.
Shed net. It's protected farming, that is shed net. This farmers raise covered one.
Polyhouse, but the polyhouse is plastic.
Yeah. So
Have you thought of it?
to put the shade underneath of it.
No. Using solar panels as a say cover and covering all sides by green.
Please use the mic, sir. I'm not able to hear you.
And covering all 4 sides, lateral sides by poly.
Yeah, we can cover it. We are going to do it for hydroponics.
Perhaps that may help.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello. Question. For the shade net question, you may get some visibility on it when I speak on that subject. Like, sure.
Any agrivoltaics, it is very difficult to predict anything right now because it's a new concept and we are not sure how much we are going to get out from agriculture practices. But on the other side, if we are talking about, if we'll just only consider SPV like solar photovoltaics, so the payback period is, everybody knows about it, it is in between 5 to 7 years. But although the investment on this sort of the projects are more than the traditional ones, so might be the payback period in terms of SPV, if we are talking about somewhere around 8 to 10 years.
So 20% is additional cost.
cost for the structure.
Thank you very much. Any other question from the audience, or else we will move on to the next speaker. You also have the opportunity to ask after all the presentations are done. Yeah. So we have the next presentation from my other co-panelist, Mr. Shravan Sampath, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Oakridge. A few details about Mr. Shravan Sampath. He is He's a leading industry professional with 15 plus years of experience in renewable energy with organizations like Reliance, L&T Infrastructure, Equis Funds Group, etc. At Oakridge Energy, Shravan has conceptualized urban solar rooftop projects in Delhi and other Indian cities as a solution to the climate crisis and enable distributed generation as a model for other cities. Further, Oakridge developed solar projects on Delhi government schools in post-COVID circumstances and ensured schools became self-sufficient in energy. This business model was also greatly appreciated by the Honorable Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal as a model for an urban-centric state like Delhi. Oakridge was also the first Indian company to raise an international line of credit for residential solar from 𝗪𝗏𝗏, a Dutch social impact fund, and is awarded with the US India Clean Energy Finance grant for this unique business model. On the educational qualifications, Mr. Shravan Sampath has a bachelor's in engineering from Madras University, and he has an MBA from IIM Lucknow, and he is also a certified certificate holder in corporate renewables procurement from the famous Imperial College London. The floor is yours, Shravan.
So this is our presentation, and this is okay. So we did a smaller photovoltaic project, which is in fact very close to Surindar's project. So my company has been around since 2016-17, and we were one of the early movers in agrivoltaics. In fact, my project was commissioned, I think, a few months before Surindar's project, but they're physically located very close to each other. Generally speaking, we develop projects for industries, commercial establishment, government buildings, etc. And I would have liked to call myself a pioneer in development of agrivoltaics, but then Surindar has built a much bigger project than ours, so I think he would take that title. We did this project as part of a agriculture research project where the Agriculture Research Institute wanted to sort of look at what agriculture is possible underneath. So this project is done in a very scientific manner, and I'll explain that as we go along. We have been Delhi has a progressive policy where the city state of Delhi has a policy where you can set up solar projects outside Delhi and use what is called virtual net metering to supply that power to any customer within Delhi. So the open access limitation of 1 megawatt doesn't apply. So using this, we have been wheeling the power to various agriculture research institutes in Delhi by way of a long-term PPA. That's our commercial model. So broadly speaking, this is a small 110 kilowatt project, and we commissioned in early 2021. We got, of course, equity financed in-house. We got debt from IREDA, and this was part of a sort of a larger pool of projects which we financed. So obviously we didn't go to any institution for financing a 110 kilowatt project. Again, on the commercial side also there's a lot of innovation in this project, because being a 110 kilowatt project, we use the framework of virtual net metering, and this is the first virtual net meter project in Delhi and possibly in India as well. The crops that are being grown under this are okra, tomato, brinjal, capsicum, leafy vegetables, root vegetables. So there is a whole lot of vegetable cultivation taking place underneath. Design wise, it's a little different from what you saw in Surindar's plant, and that I will come to in my potentially in my next slide once this cursor moves. Okay, sorry. Right. So the broader issue with agrivoltaics, as we all know, is that going forward, maybe over the next 5-10 years, the availability of land for solar is going to be a key concern. There is eventually going to be a trade-off between utilization of agricultural lands for solar plants or utilizing agricultural land for agriculture. And we are seeing in state after state that agriculture, that solar is providing more attractive returns to farmers than agriculture. So farmers are in fact leaving their land on long-term agreements with developers and annual lease income kind of a model. So the whole idea of agrivoltaics, which originated in Europe originally, was the harmonious coexistence of solar and agriculture in the same premises. The solar stays on an elevated frame and the agriculture continues underneath. There is a planned water channel. so that the water can be optimized. There is a full functional, there is a height which is ensured. So in our case, we started at around 3.5 meters or so, and Surindar was mentioning he has done 4.4. But the idea is that we want mechanized equipment to run. So it's not enough if you're planting just like plants, but we want tractors to run under our plant. And that is the true test of whether this concept works or not. And globally, this is what has been done. We need to make a framework such that, and that means you have to think through every aspect, not only the frame, but also the cable routing. The cables have to go on top, they cannot go underground. If they go underground, they have to go below a certain depth because you don't want tractors sort of cutting through our cables. That could be a safety hazard. The most important element in agrivoltaics is a sort of equal priority given to agriculture and to solar as concepts. And it's never that, I think one gentleman asked in the previous round whether agriculture is the priority or solar is the priority. Agrivoltaics works only when both are given equal priority. If you want to do solar, there is enough and more land in Rajasthan or Kutch or wherever it is. There is a need for government policy, clearly so. So there was some subsidy available for elevated solar structures, so we used that subsidy and built this project. Net metering allows farmers to inject surplus power into the grid, so that's a commercial model which is available. Government of India set a target of 40,000 megawatt for distributed solar, which primarily includes rooftop solar. But doing this in small clusters is also equally economically viable and should be encouraged. Kusum scheme provides for integrated farm and solar development, and this is something which which we have also been participating in various tenders. Again, as Surindar said, commercial hardly matters. I differ with that approach, sir. For me, commercial is the bedrock of any scalable policy, and we would like, and we have already figured out a few commercial models around this, and I will explain that as we go along. But as far as I understand, this is figuring out the commercial element of this. As Surindar rightly pointed out, the capital cost is almost 20% higher than a regular project because the steel frames are much bigger and the span. So span is a very important element. I'll show you that I think in my next slide. So if you see what we've done here in this project is that, again, this is a very different model from what you saw in the previous one. So you look at this, the gap between the rows of panels is significant. So the idea was to give both direct sunlight and indirect sunlight to the crops underneath. The distance between the columns was 5.25 meters, so that allowed for the movement of mechanized equipment. But this was only a 2-panel frame, as opposed to much larger frames which were being used in other projects. We use only 2-panel frame. The idea is to give a mix of direct light as well as indirect light, and that is how this model was conceptualized. So the design elements of this project are, as you can see, around 5.5 meters span between the columns. We had a frame where we had a foundation coming up, and both the panels the entire panel was supported from a single. So we had a 2-panel structure which was supported by a single foundation. This is how we designed it. The idea of giving such height, as I mentioned previously, was mechanical equipment to pass through, and we ensured the water system is also kind of done properly, so that the cleaning water, too much of water also can harm plants. So we try to create a structure whereby all the water that is used to clean the solar panels gets drained to one corner, and water harvesting is done there, and the water then accumulates, and eventually it can enhance the groundwater availability, or the water can be used for other purposes. And again, being close to an urban cluster like Delhi, we had the same problem which Surindar also rightly identified, which is the cleaning of the solar panels. It was a very big issue, and we found that it was not easy to do. So of course, right now we have cleaning personnel climbing and from one side, but this was a little easier to do than the other project you saw, because we are only a 2-panel structure. We did not need walkways between the panels. We left a row between the crops where ladders could be placed, and human personnel could climb and clean the panel. So that is the way we address this. So you'll see here that this is the way the thing was done. The inverters are located right there, and the crops now are in very advanced stage. In fact, 2-3 crop cycles have been completed. We had the advantage that we had partnered with a government-owned agriculture research institute called the 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗃, and they took charge of the agriculture underneath. So they did it in such a scientific manner that this is a field which was almost 2-3 acres, and we had a small plant in the middle. They grew the same crops outside and underneath the panels. Like they grew it separately and also underneath the panel. So they have been for the last year or two looking at the data from this and figuring out as to what is the difference in productivity under agrivoltaics and otherwise. So this has been a very scientifically done piece of agriculture, and I am sure that research is available for any of you who would like to see how the agriculture flourishes under the this one. This is a video, but I think we saw that already, so I think it's fine, we can just move on. Oh, okay, so we are not moving on. We will see this video. So this is our field, and you will see these crops right in front. These are crops which are being grown without any hindrance. So this is regular agriculture. This is where the solar plant starts. The cropping pattern is same both underneath and outside. So there is some element of understanding that has been built into how the availability of limited lights affects these projects. We kept a significant distance between the, you'll see the distance between the columns and also the distance between the various rows of panels is significant out here. In this space I would normally have done anywhere between maybe 500 to 700 kilowatts, but we did much lesser because we wanted to create that space so that the crops underneath have access to both direct and indirect sunlight. And right, so this is the kind of campus in which this has been done. Our major learnings from this, I think this is something which is very useful probably for a discussion like this. The first is maintenance. So maintenance is a problem. Agrivoltaics, we have not been able to figure out completely how the space can be effectively utilized. Because we need space for the agriculture, we also need space for somebody to climb and clean the panels. So I need to leave some kind of a space between the agriculture to sort of do that. Availability of fresh water is an issue because most of the times the water available in such areas could be hard water. So it does not affect agriculture in any way, but hard water affects solar panel cleaning. In fact, Isapur also has the same problem, so I'm sure आपका भी ऐसा कुछ issue होता होगा. So availability of water. The availability of water could be all the more an issue in case of water shortages. So in case of regular water availability, of course it's only a question of say cleaning the water. But what happens if there is a situation where there is inadequate water and you have to choose between watering the plants and watering the solar plant? And at that time it could result in a conflict kind of situation. So thinking through the water availability for solar is going to be a very key issue going forward. Soil quality again is very important because you're seeing tractors are running underneath our plant, and the soil, the nature of the soil is going to be constantly changing because agriculture is taking place. So the kind of soil studies and the kind of foundations that are used when the project was started, and the project has to go through 25 years, it is likely that the nature of the soil and the strength, the structural stability of the soil could change over the next few years because of the nature of agriculture taking place there. So what I need to then figure out is how robust is my design and how can I ensure that whatever happens to the crop, whatever happens to the soil nearby, my structure stays stable. So this is going to be a key constraint as we scale up this program in this country. The issues during construction, of course, one of the major problems we face in Kusum is that the buyer of power, which is Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, all these states are calling tenders, and the Kusum tariffs are just not viable. They are looking at 3 rupee kind of tariffs for these kind of projects, and these are not viable because the capital cost of these projects is significantly higher. The other issue during construction is that we need a stable partner who understands the value of solar. So while we have put together a situation where mechanized farming can work, preferably we would like a partner who is structured into some kind of a win-win partnership where he has an upside from the energy generated. So what we are looking at in our new projects is that we are paying the farmer not a lease rental per acre, but we are giving him a share per unit generated. So that way the farmer also gets incentivized into supporting us in the implementation of the project and the operation of the project going on, because the more number of units that are generated from this plant, the more the income to the farmer as well. The other issue of course during construction is the cabling, water channeling. These are all issues that need to be thought through very carefully. There are safety issues. I'm not sure the government of India still has proper safety regulations, because these are high voltage systems, 1000 volt, 1500 volt kind of systems. So I think safety needs to be thought through very carefully. I touched upon this earlier, the depth of the foundation is very important, because you need to be at a place where the soil stability over the next 25 years will not affect your structural stability. The other agricultural issues which we are facing are of course the distance between the solar panels. So this needs to be ensured in our view. The second thing is the distance between the panels itself. Third is, as I mentioned, the stakeholder management as to how agriculture and solar both work harmoniously going forward. So these are a few of the ideas which we have been working on. So our project has completed, I think, more than 1.5 years at this point. So we've been working with various businesses, and one model of course is to sell this power to the government under KUSUM. We are finding these tariffs are not viable as far as agrivoltaics are concerned. So we are trying to figure out a commercial model that works for anybody, which can help all of us do this. So one which we are seeing is that we are getting a lot of interest from industries which have a requirement for both agriculture produce as well as energy. So that could be say food processing units and things like that, which have their own captive farms. Or it could be vineyards, because we have a lot of creepers in our plant as well, and it appears that the structure for the creeper and the structure for the solar, they can be integrated. So maybe we can have solar wine at some point or something like that. So vineyards is definitely an opportunity. Hotels and resorts have a lot of land. Resorts particularly have a lot of land, and they would be happy to have a project like this in their premises, because they can also showcase it to their customers who come there. Hotels, we are finding a lot of interest, particularly in the North India area, and these are hotels that want to be known as green hotels. So wherever they want this kind of visibility, clean energy plus agriculture, these are innovative projects to sell to them. The new Green Open Access Rules 2022, which came out earlier this week, has changed the threshold of open access from 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatts. States need to adopt it. States are still going by their own regulation, but if states were to adopt this regulation in toto, effectively the open access market multiplies 10x, because we are looking at even small and medium customers. Lots of times what happens is, and this is, I've seen this a lot, is that industries take land which is much in excess of their requirement. So when they go to an industrial zone, they take 10 acres of land and they start manufacturing at say 1 acre or 2 acres. The rest of it is pretty much open land. So these kind of business models can pay back in 5 years or 6 years. So it makes a lot of sense for an industry to do something like this. Have an elevated structure where you're doing agriculture underneath, and you have solar getting generated as well. And the payback on this can be 5 years, 6 years or so. So the industry can save a lot of money by doing something like this. The other thing is of course government programs. I think I also differ a little bit with with the expectation that this is a program that will work very well in rural areas. We are seeing that this is agrivoltaics will work much better where the land is far more valuable, where it is in a green zone. Say for example, our projects are in the green zone which is outside Delhi. Even our upcoming projects, at the moment we are not able to take their names, but because of confidentiality reasons. But even our upcoming projects are located in the same region. So we find that where a city has its own requirement within, the state is also willing to support, the city is also willing to support it, and it's possible to do this. So in the green zone outside cities, this could be potentially a fantastic option, or closer to urban areas. Government establishments are another opportunity. Most of these government-owned factories, like ordnance factories and these kind of things, they have huge campuses. BHEL, all these entities, universities, government-owned universities, they have huge land banks like Osmania University, etc. So all these lands can be utilized. They want to use it for agriculture anyway. So it makes a lot of sense to integrate that into solar and create an elevated frame where agriculture can also be done along with this. So that is a area where we are also seeing a lot of traction in the market. There is also potential in case governments are interested in pushing agrivoltaics. It can be made mandatory in green zones. In Delhi, there is now in the Delhi Master Plan 2042, which is presently in draft stage. They are permitting elevated solar as being solar along with agriculture, effectively agrivoltaics, as being an accepted use in Delhi's green zone. And Delhi green zone is something like 10 lakh hectares of land. So if this can be done in Delhi's green zone, it can probably be done in Bombay's green zone. Each of the cities, the master plan has a green zone, even Hyderabad. So if these kind of changes can be made, this will help in a big way in sort of increasing this. But in my view, the big catch now is, look, technically we have solved these problems in pilot scale. The projects can be scaled up. The important thing is to find a commercial model that works for everybody, where we also end up making reasonable returns on our investment, and the customer also has something very unique to showcase. So for that, I think it's important to create a commercial sort of framework around agrivoltaics, and we are seeing a lot of traction in these areas, and this is something that I would like to close with. This is an excellent area, but obviously we have solved the technical aspect. If we can find good commercial applications for agrivoltaics, this is a line that could potentially add maybe 3,000-4,000 megawatts pan-India every year. Thank you so much. These are my coordinates in case you have any observations. In case you own a vineyard, if you own a hotel, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to solarize you.
So a couple of questions. You spoke about the crops that are grown under the panels and outside the panels, right? Is it too early to come up with some results from that study?
Solar panels the productivity is better than the crops outside, because outside in the northern belt, direct sunlight, even now for example the heat wave and all these things, direct sunlight in fact has a slightly more it reduces productivity to some extent as far as agriculture is concerned. So at least in one crop cycle which was completed, they found that the crops under the solar panels did better. But while doing that, please bear in mind that we gave enough space between the rows of panels also. So these are crops that had not only direct sunlight but also indirect sunlight. They had both. And therefore that mix seems to work very well. Also I agree with Surindar on his point, which is that our plant is generating compared to the plants in the city on solar rooftops, distributed solar plants, our solar plants are also generating around 15% higher. So from a productivity perspective, this is a win-win. I think there is enough data for that yet. But I think my colleague, I think Nimish is going to talk a little bit about the agriculture productivity part of it. But this has been our experience so far.
So any results on the spacing of the panels also?
You mean the spacing of the rows?
Yeah, you said you kept wide range.
Yeah. So we kept, I think, 8 meters between the rows of panels. Each of our panel arrays is only a 2-panel array. So we had only a 2-panel portrait array, and then we had 8 meters between them. These were inputs given, as you know, we are not agriculture people, we are solar guys. These inputs were given to us by the Agriculture Research Institute, and this model has worked really well in terms of productivity for agriculture.
Okay, great, thanks. Excellent results. One last question. Would agrivoltaics be viable for a rooftop-based agri, like in grow bags, etc.?
So these structures are very heavy. In cities, yes, definitely there will be some this thing, but subject to structural stability, because the structures here are quite heavy. So if you have an elevated frame, particularly on the rooftop, that needs to conform to different building BIS standards, building codes, which mean that it has to handle wind speeds, higher wind speeds than ground mounted plants, which will mean the structure has to be that much fatter and that much stronger. So if it's built to that, of course then hydroponics and all these elements can be built in, but all that is subject to availability of structural strength for that building.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shravan. I had one question. I mean, how did you market it to the 𝗨̱ Vigyan Kendra, which is a Government of India institution?
Yeah. Actually, they marketed it to us. because we have solar developers. We are neutral. Solar is solar as far as we are concerned. But they told us to do this, and to be honest, I wasn't convinced initially that what is all this kind of. But here I am 2 years later. I don't regret it at all. Plant is performing better. The agriculture is good, and it's fantastic. Visibility for all parties concerned. So, in fact, they had been trying to do this for 2-3 years before, and they couldn't find anybody to actually, because we were investing also. Apart from doing this, we were also sort of investing at our own cost. So they needed somebody to do this. The good thing with a city like Delhi, again, this is another thing why I keep insisting that these projects make sense close to an urban location. Oh, sorry, we're running out of time. Because high tariffs are there in cities, so it makes a lot, you get very good return even for the customer if you supply this power.
Thank you, Shravan. I think we are running out of time. The last but not the least presentation is from our third panelist, Nimish. Nimish is a partner and CTO at Sunseed Agro Photovoltaics, a startup which aims to create bankable agri-PV systems by developing deep tech on light simulations, agri-strategies, etc. Nimish is a graduate with distinction from IIT Mumbai from Civil Engineering 2009 batch. He has worked in various multinationals in his capacity as a civil and structural engineer. He has experience in the design of complex solar mounting systems as also buildings. So Nimish's role at Sunseed is in deploying the required complex agro-solar mounting systems that combine precision agriculture with solar model mounting. The floor is yours, Nimish.
Hello everyone. This is Nimish Prabhukhanolkar. I am a CTO at Sunseed APV, and today, since the thread is on business opportunities that exist in this sector, I would be specifically talking about PV and precision agriculture synergies. Before that, at Sunseed, what we do, Sunseed is basically a pure agrivoltaics services and technologies company. Out of the things that are showing on the screen, primarily the three things that are the most important is, and which you also saw in the previous two gentlemen that spoke, you have to elevate the infrastructure that you are using so that agriculture can happen below. So Sunseed has a few very good designs. It's one of our flagship areas in which we work. Then the next thing is light is something that is very important because that is the resource that is shared. So we have our own proprietary light simulation engine that we use to find out light sharing. And the third one is we have a consulting team of agronomists which help us on developing agriculture models that are very specific to APV. So when we are speaking of precision agriculture, these three things come to mind. There may be other ways of deploying precision agriculture, but these are the key ones. The first one are polyhouses. Polyhouses are generally enclosed structures with a polythene film, and they give you some amount of active control where you can control humidity, temperature, and of course you are controlling light as well. So 1 acre of a polyhouse costs as much as 30 to 40 lakh. So please mark this number. Then the next way of deploying precision agriculture is also a shade house. So shade house doesn't have a polythene film. What it has is a HDPE metallized net. So obviously air can go in and out. So there is only sunlight control, and this costs probably half as much, around 15 to 20 lakh. And then there are other ways of deploying precision agriculture, namely hydroponics, aquaponics, where then you are going one step ahead. So that costs still more. Now compare this with what we spend in solar, where a rough estimate from my side is at 4 to 6 rupees a watt. Per acre we would be spending not more than 20 lakh. So because there are more people in solar here, we might be having a perception that, well, solar is the more costly infrastructure that goes out, whereas actually the reverse is true. In case of precision agriculture, it costs a lot. It is costlier than our solar infrastructure. So because of that, Okay, before I go to that, there is one more slide that obviously there is the issue of high capital investment that plagues precision agriculture, and then this infrastructure needs repairs after every 5 years. It's not a 25 to 50 year infrastructure. It needs a technically sound team as well. So because of these issues, the obvious synergies that come to mind are what you will see in the next page. Yeah. So what if rather than or along with shade nets that are shading the ground, you also use solar modules to shade the ground? What if the infrastructure that hosts shade net also hosted the modules? What if solar trackers gave you further control on ground shading? What if the structure that is used for solar mounting also hosted trellis based agriculture? So the synergies are very significant. So we at Sunseed kind of thought on all these synergies as to what could be a product that combines all of this, and what we came up with is what you will see in the next page. This is a architectural rendering, it's not a real image. This is the Sunseed shade house. It's an enclosed structure where shade will be provided by fixed tilt panels plus a manually retractable shade net. The shade net needs to be retractable also because so that you can do your operations on the solar modules, cleaning operations or any maintenance that you need to do. There is a matrix of there will be one more photo. Yeah. So this is an inside view of it. There is a matrix of wires that is enabling the columns, that is stabilizing the columns as well as that is launching the shade net. These same wires will also enable trellis based agriculture. There are further tracker synergies as well. The shade house is fundamentally tracker compatible. Why we should think of trackers and APV is that the delta involved in setting up an elevated tracker versus a normal tracker is much less than the delta between an elevated fixed tilt and a normal fixed tilt. The tracker also ensures a more uniform ground light distribution, and the tracker gives you more active control over managing light. If there is any critical window for plant growth, then you can sacrifice some solar production for agri production. So the first implementation of the shade house, I am glad to say, will be on a project that is funded by 𝗨𝗶𝗶 and GIZ themselves. So this first project will be going on, or it will be taking shape in a place called Bandarwada in Parbani, where you will actually see this happening. And there, apart from the bifacial shade house, we also have other semi-elevated structures where also we will practice agrivoltaics. So the current status is this is under construction as we speak right now, and it should be complete in 2-3 months. So that is it from my side. So I gave what I wanted to present here are the immense business opportunities that exist when you start thinking of protected cultivation or precision agriculture together with solar mounting. Thank you.